Hey folks, it's a long time for me to make a video, including my face. Usually I have to animate it. But this particular topic has really gone, has really got me postponed on in the last 3 weeks until today. That really wanted me to juggle between different areas to make this type of video. Um, it's the fact that, you know, in this country, in the Western world, there's always a say that many Westerners either don't pop kids or pop less kids in comparison to a third world country. And also the way you raise your child in particular first world country, especially those who has a very great social welfare, it tend to draw a different type of upbringing or as well. And it's also the education department and how parenting style is not authoritarian. You can't smack your kids, and that sort of policy. And there's child protection. Children has the power to call the police or the teachers regards to parents abuse them in form of way. In the Western world and in the third world country, hitting or discipline in a way that straighten the child up to focus in a certain area or be mature minded or be listener, like obedient, I guess that's the word, to be raised. Even like kids nowadays raised in the Western world comparison to a third world country is a huge difference, where a Western world raise a child to enter adulthood by the time they hit 18. Now, those unfortunately in the Western world, the way how they brought the child up usually are not as very mature, like in comparison to family orientated or mature, like-minded in comparison to a third world country. And as well, it does affect those who are prone to on the dating as well. A lot of women in the Western world usually tend to date, a lot more matured age, or perhaps I can't say that word, but probably 7 or 8 years gap on dating or marriage or whatever it is, which that fits their scope and their vision as well. And it disrupted everything. And one thing that really struck me to make this video today is when I was driving, and there's a lot of IVF over 40 years old wanting to have a child. I'm just there. I'm like, why didn't you want to have a child when you're 30s and your 20s? And now Australia is known to be an IVF country in the world, the most Googled search IVF as well. What is wrong with you guys? Like, why don't you, pick to have a child when you're 20 and 30s? It makes more sense because the feminists taught you guys to have kids later on in your life because you can always have kids, and but they don't tell you how much it costs, the implication, birth implication, and birth defects, or it dramatically increases when you go through the later age on marriage and things like, or having a kid, things like that. I have to zoom in. It's a bit too much. But what I'm trying to say here is, I think there's a huge difference between the Western world and the third world country raising a child. Western world, I'm talking about especially those who are heavily welfare state, or social security, you guys may call it in your country, is the fact that a kid, in the Western world, you'll be adulthood by the time you hit 18. In a third world country, entering adulthood can be, especially in China, you have to get married to be entering adulthood, or some cultures has to do different things to be adulthood. But in the Western world, you turn 18, you're adulthood, you do whatever you want, you say whatever you want, and you do whatever you want. And I think family raising a child, there's a huge difference between the Western world and the third world country, is the fact that a Western world, when you raise a child to 18 or whatever, and you don't really 100% expect that child in the Western world grow up to look after you, or shipping money, or money, or financial, you know um you know giving financially, um to their parents. Usually is very indulged this whole individualism, family, you do you, me do me. You have your own power, own thinking, individualistic minded, do whatever you want. And that's what many people should really understand, even a newly arrived migrant, or you already have a child, is the fact that don't ever expect that that child's going to look after you. It's very slim. Um, you could pour your resources, your efforts, your values, your upbringing, and everything to your child until the minimum at the age of 18. And after that, the child to do whatever they want, all right? And, they submit it within the society. In the third world country is a bit more different, marriage, having kid is like a survival. Where, maybe there's pension in the country, or maybe pensions out there are very low, and having grandkids or kids to help them out financially, and is expected to be looked after if they don't have a very strong aged care background in the country, or caring background. Usually the siblings or the child will look after the elders, and as well, to understand, like, a lot more responsibility is a lot more meaningful after you get you reach a certain age. I like the Western world, you can remarry and divorce, or pop as much kids or anything. The kid will end up to be individualism in the far end of the society. And I think this whole IVF thing at the age of 40, you had your time, you had fun, 20s and 30s being selfish, or perhaps you struggle to give birth. I'm not going to include that, but if Australia has a very high number, it tells you a lot what's going on. And, even if you do have a child at the age of 40, by the time you hit 60, the child's already 18 or 19 already. So there's a whole huge, the thing is understanding the whole thing. And I guess this topic, it will be a very big topic for anyone to understand, to look deeply through.